Ruin my fishing fun. Guess I'll have to try and catch something else. Back when I was in high school, must have been about 14 years old, every Wednesday afternoon we got to choose a sport and we would all be bussed out to various locations to go have fun. There was plenty of shitty options and a few that were very sought after, with the most popular choice being fishing, because we would mostly go to a wharf that also had a fish and chip shop that the teacher let us use. Most people would pick this sport to sit on the wharf and eat junk food and not actually fish at all. And with there being a pecking order in place on who gets first choice for choosing their sport selection, it took me years before I even got the opportunity to go fishing at school. I was a pretty keen fisherman at the time, spending a lot of my free time at rivers and beaches blissfully throwing a line in the water. I was over the moon and brought some of my more expensive gear and my flashy new rod and a cheap hand reel to use for spare lime. The teacher who took us out that day was an absolute pushover, and couldn't care less about what was going on with us students. About 5 minutes after putting my line in the water, some kids my age showed up from a rival school. They were skipping class and starting annoying us, teasing us, stealing food from some of the other students, and a barrage of other teenage antics. Me, being scared of confrontation and built like a wet sponge, went to go and get the teacher to ask for some help getting the other kids to piss off and let us enjoy ourselves. He huffed and puffed but eventually came over to where they were harassing us and in a half-assed sentence said, "Stop annoying Nitrous. He wants to catch a fish." This fueled the fire unsurprisingly, and they ramped up their game tenfold. They got in my face and started mocking me. Then one of them had a bright idea, and they kicked my hand reel into the water. Before I could do anything, they scampered away and hid under the wharf. I shed a tear but didn't have the guts to say anything to them. I walked over to let the teacher know what had happened, and he unsurprisingly said, "Well, you need to be more careful with your belongings," and that was that. Being a hot summer day, those annoying kids began to swim underneath the dock. It was a rocky, oyster-y mess under there, but whatever, and were giggling like mad. But I tried my best to ignore them. "I want to catch a fish." One of the other kids who was fishing a few meters away from me called out and said, "Aw man, I had a fish but it got away, and it snapped the whole line." That sucks, but doesn't affect me. I'm a professional. I had expensive braided line that was quite hard to break. A few minutes later a kid on the other side had the same thing happen to them. And then seconds after that, I felt a big tug and boom, my line snapped. I thought to myself, that's weird because there's only small fish in here. Nothing big enough to break a line. That's when I saw one of the kids from earlier peek out from underneath the wharf with a small pair of scissors, and it all made sense. I went and tried to sob to the teacher, who in no uncertain terms told me to stop bothering him, and asked the kids myself to leave me alone. Yeah, I'm sure that will work. They had been cutting our lines, and I knew I had to do something about it. I got into my tackle box and found my strongest line, a meter-long stainless steel leader line, almost impossible to break, cut, snap, and a nice fat hook. I took off a few meters of line, attached it to the steel leader, and then tightly secured the hook to the end. I finished off my crude invention and tied that off to the line of my rod. I felt like MacGyver. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. I played dumb, and poked my head underneath the dock to tell them to please leave our lines alone, hoping they'd give enough courage to go through with it. And before I could even say anything, I got splashed by a big barrage of water from them. I yelled out from the top of the wharf, "Please guys, I really want to catch a fish." With a bit of razzle-dazzle so it appeared I was still attempting to catch something. I put a very mushy prawn on the line that would fall off if you looked at it the wrong way, and dropped my line into the water. It took only 30 seconds before I felt that faithful tug, and knowing they wouldn't be able to cut that line. With a swift motion, I tugged back, hard, as is standard when fishing. "Take it from me." I heard someone let out a big scream, and with a quick motion got the line nice and tangled around a nail sticking out of the wharf under the guise of trying to do something to help. Within seconds the pushover teacher finally came over. Guess he changed his tune now that it sounded like someone was getting murdered under his guard. And we both looked over the edge to see a kid with a nice juicy hook embedded in his hand screaming like a banshee. I used my pudgy appearance and couldn't hurt a fly demeanor to my advantage, and looked at the teacher to say, "I'm not sure what happened. I was just trying to catch a fish." It took him a solid minute to get the line disconnected and set the kid loose, in which I was able to pack up my gear and get ready to leave. And the commotion of 30 students coming to see what on earth was going on was spectacular. No one seemed to have any suspicion that this could have been a purposeful act of vengeance. From what I heard, the man-sized fish I caught had to go to the hospital to get the hook removed, and became known as Fish Fingers for quite some time after that. It's a shame I didn't get to take home something to eat that day, but nothing tastes sweeter than revenge. Sounds like you caught a hell of a big mouth, lol. What a shithead. Ha 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 ha, Fish Fingers. Too bad the teacher didn't get one in his behind for being a spineless L-bend. Revenge is best served cold. Not the same, but still dealing with me trying to fish with shitheads around. I fished a lot, not as much as you, but pretty self-sufficient. And in high school I found out a couple of my friends liked to fish. So I go with friend one and we go to the creek. Like 50 feet across but only like 10 feet deep and pretty murky. This kid did not like bugs or anything like that. So live worms being the best bait ended up with me putting on his worms. We were 18. And he had me take his fish off the hook because it was slimy. Friend number 2 caught a fish in a different creek. Like 10 to 15 feet across but maybe 3 to 4 feet at its deepest and mostly 1 foot throughout. He catches a fish. We go to release it. He tosses it like 20 feet in the air. Needless to say, he killed the fish and let it float downstream. Then later he starts throwing rocks in the creek where I am fishing because he got bored and wanted to go. I told him it hadn't even been 30 minutes. He died inside.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.